The American Jobs Alliance has been a founding sponsor, been with me from the beginning, and joining us now is their founder and chairman emeritus of the American Jobs Alliance, which is an economic nationalist nonprofit trade group, and he's now the founder and chairman emeritus. And I am executive director named by Curtis Ellis, so it all works out. He and his organization were instrumental in building public awareness about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as you know, that led to that trade deals deficit. And he also served as senior policy advisor to the Trump for President campaign, and now as a senior policy advisor to one of the Trump-affiliated political action committees, which I always forget the name of it, which he's going to tell me now that he's coming on. Curtis Ellis, good to have you, man.
John, that's America First Policies, the name you always forget.
I know, I didn't want to say it the wrong way. America First Policies, and you are a senior policy advisor. And okay, so the battle for NAFTA, it's going to start, right? And it's going to be part of the 2018 midterms. And we're loaded for bear. I'm excited about it because we can actually make a difference the way we did with the disastrous TPP. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we're going to see a replay of what we saw with the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that we called Obama trade. You may remember, your listeners may remember a lot of talk about Obama trade during the last couple of years. This Trans-Pacific Partnership was it was sort of NAFTA on steroids, NAFTA with teeth, Agenda 21 with teeth. It was this globalist agreement that would have just messed up America's economy, messed with our jobs, with our sovereignty, and opened our borders and done a whole horrible list of things that we never would have recovered from. But it's all a nightmare that went away when Donald Trump was elected president. He killed it. But the important thing to remember is that Donald Trump made it a major issue in the 2016 election, and that's why, a big reason why he became president. This resonated, his opposition to NAFTA and to these crummy trade deals that are just a bad deal for Americans, motivated voters in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan to come out and vote for Donald Trump. And a lot of these people had never voted for a Republican. A lot of these people had never voted because both parties have been supporting this disastrous trade policy for forever. They said, why bother to vote? Frickin' frack, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, they're all the same. Finally, here's a guy comes along and says the unspeakable. He's talking about the unthinkable. And he says it out loud. Free trade has been a disaster. NAFTA has been a disaster. What he said in Michigan, and he said it elsewhere on the campaign trail, is really true. He said, we used to make cars in Flint, and you couldn't drink the water in Mexico. Now, after NAFTA, we make cars in Mexico, they make cars in Mexico, and you can't drink the water in Flint. And everybody knew it. Everybody up there knew it. The people in the swamp of Washington didn't know it because they're paid not to know it. They got all the money from the globalists, all the money the globalists made by shipping our jobs to places like Mexico and China. That money went right into the swamp. So Donald Trump talked about this during the campaign, killed TPP, and making free trade an issue in the campaign is something the swamp creatures fear. This is like their worst nightmare. That's why they always try to pass these agreements in the odd-numbered years. They know the people of America hate these trade agreements, and they're not free trade. I don't even want to call them free trade agreements because they're not free trade. It's managed trade. It's carving up the turkey for the big guys who have the knives or who are at the table and letting the little people who aren't at the table just starve. But so it's managed trade, it's corporatism writ large, carving up market share, it's cartel, it's the cartels dividing up the spoils. That's what it is. So don't let anybody tell you it's free trade. Anyway, they like to take care of this stuff on the off years when people don't come vote. Well, thanks to people like you and others out there, the Trans-Pacific Partnership that was supposed to pass in 2015 got balled up in the Senate, got balled up in the House, and it seeped into, it became an issue in the 2016 presidential campaign. Hillary Clinton was exposed for the phony she is. She wouldn't say she was against it. When she finally did, everybody realized, well, you were for it before you were against it. Anyway, it just messed with her. It messed with the whole political equation. Well, what's going to happen now is we have NAFTA being renegotiated. Donald Trump made good on his promise in the campaign to get out of NAFTA, to renegotiate it. So as soon as he got in, he started the renegotiation of NAFTA. He told Canada and Mexico, we're going to withdraw from this agreement unless you guys agree to certain changes. Number one, we got to have more American-made auto parts in those cars made in Mexico if you want to bring them back into this country and sell them here. Number two, these phony international kangaroo courts that companies and countries can sue to overturn our laws, sue for damages. These are going to become voluntary. And guess what? We just might not opt in on them. But right now, they're mandatory. That's not going to happen anymore. Number three, Buy American. Right now, we have this screwed up deal where anytime our government spends money on tax on goods and services, they're spending our money, taxpayer money. Anybody from Mexico, any company from Mexico or China can bid on those jobs, right? So what happens is American tax dollars are being used to buy stuff made in Mexico. American companies who have to pay Social Security tax and everything else, property taxes, they're getting can I say it on your show? They're getting screwed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's happening.
Yeah, screwed is fine.
Well, we're going to beef that up so Americans are first in line. American businesses, American workers are first in line when our tax dollars are being spent. How about we put Americans first when it comes to spending tax dollars? And finally, and most importantly, Donald Trump says this whole agreement, this new NAFTA, NAFTA 2.0, is going to sunset. In 5 years, it's all on the table again. Like any good business, no business enters into a contract that extends forever into perpetuity. Every contract comes up for renewal, comes up for renegotiation. Well, that's not the way Washington has done these stupid trade agreements. Donald Trump says no more. 5 years from now, we're going to be back at the table. We're going to update this thing. We're going to figure out what works, what didn't work, what we got right, what we didn't get right, and we're going to fix it. Well, what happened is Mexico and Canada said, no way. They walked away. They said, no, we reject all of this out of hand. So what the United States did is they said, all right, you don't want to talk about it? Well, we'll give you time to think about it. We're going to have the next round of talks next year. Think about it, guys. So these talks, the whole NAFTA renegotiation was supposed to be done by the end of the year. That was the whole idea. Again, the swamp creatures want to have all of these trade agreements hammered out in the odd number years. Well, our U.S. trade representative, Ambassador Bob Lighthizer, he's great. He's a real Trumpy. He worked for Reagan. He's an economic nationalist. He believes in America first. He told these creeps who aren't just these creeps in Mexico and Canada who walked away from the negotiations, he told them, well, you know what? You go home and you think about this for a while. We'll be back. We'll get back to you next year when you're done thinking about it. Well, what that has done effectively is it means we will be debating NAFTA and negotiating NAFTA, and Congress will be debating the new agreement and talking about it in an election year. And that's exactly what we saw happen last year.
With TPP.
Pardon me?
Yeah, right. That's what happened in the last cycle.
That's right. And that is political poison. These free trade agreements are political poison to the globalists. It's like holding up a cross to a vampire.
Right.
It just kills them. And by the way, it's not just Mexico and Canada that oppose the America First proposals that Donald Trump has put out. You've got the entire swamp that's opposed to this. You've got the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is really the globalist Chamber of Commerce. They're not about American businesses at all. They're about the Fortune 50 companies, the global corporations that buy cheap labor in China and in Mexico and anywhere on earth, who want open borders to bring cheap labor into this country. That's who's they are now rallying. They saw what Donald Trump is proposing to do to NAFTA, and they're saying, "Oh my God, we can't have that. We can't let that happen." And so they're lining up with Mexico and Canada to oppose the new NAFTA. So this is going to be a huge issue in the midterm elections next year, and it's going to be a huge issue in the primary season, where you've got the pro-Trump candidates that are being pushed by by one of these PACs, by Steve Bannon. He's lining up all these people to run against the swamp incumbents, and now we're going to have a clear choice. We're going to have a clear choice between economic patriotism or globalism, candidates who support Americans or who support outsourcing, and this could not be. It's a perfect storm, and it's the worst nightmare for the globalists and the swamp creatures.
The timing of this before the midterms couldn't be scripted better. So, Curtis, look, I mean, the biggest opportunity we've got in fighting NAFTA and bringing it to people's attention, and what a disaster it's been, is, like you say, it now plays into these primary challenges that Steve Bannon, he's going out there encouraging candidates to run against a lot of these incumbents. And as you know, it's driving the establishment now absolutely bat crap crazy, right? You got McConnell saying it's a disaster. It's going to cost us this and cost us that. You got his former chief of staff now calling Steve Bannon a racist and a white supremacist. And so that's, again, hit the easy button. That's all they have. How do you think NAFTA and the fight for renegotiation and the fact that we're going to bring these issues up, how do you think this is really going to impact some of these 2018 Republican primaries?
I have two words for you. Randy Forbes. Look what happened to him. He had a primary last year. He was all on board for Obama trade, for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, for Fast Track. He didn't even understand it. I mean, somebody told him, hey, this is good, go for it. Somebody at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce said, you don't even have to think about this one. Everybody knows this is great stuff. His opponent, Delegate Taylor, came out against it the way Donald Trump did, and Randy Forbes is now former Congressman Randy Forbes, and Delegate Taylor is now Congressman Taylor. Real quick, the two things I wanted to mention on this NAFTA renegotiation. We always talk about Mexico and what the creepy $1 an hour labor in Mexico, and Canada is not pure as driven snow. Canada subsidizes its industries. They subsidize their dairy industry.
Timber.
Donald Trump talked about that. Their aircraft industry. And you always hear the Democrats saying, well, we should import drugs from Mexico. Well, and they have a bill out there. Bernie Sanders sponsored a bill. Import cheap drugs from Mexico. Well, those drugs are cheap because of price controls, price supports, all kinds of government finagling of the market. If the Democrats get their way, what we're going to be doing is we will be importing cheap opiates from Canada and injecting them right into the countries that have been destroyed, right into the communities that have been destroyed by NAFTA and agreements like that. So, these guys better wake up in the swamp. And that's the other thing I wanted to get to. You didn't mention on your app, download John Fredericks app. You didn't mention the fish finder function inside that app, that you can look through the bottom of the boat and you can see all the swamp creatures flying by. Floating by with your John Fredericks app.
You know what? That is a feature that we have in there. It's a swamp watcher.
So no matter where you are, you don't have to be near a radio. If you have the John Fredericks app on your phone or on your iPad, you got the fish finder function, and you can see where all the swamp creatures are at any given moment. And then maybe you can drive your car and run into them. I don't know.
Now, of course, Curtis, that is so creative and so much fun that, of course, now I'm going to ask you to cut a 30-second promotional ad for me for that. You knew that was coming, right? Because your ads are the best. And so I'm going to be on you now for that, to cut me a 30-second ad for the fish finder function of our John Fredericks app. Curtis Ellis, great to have you with us, man. You're going to be our regular now through the midterms once a week. Curtis Ellis, the Senior Policy Advisor for America First Policies and former Senior Advisor to President Trump. And I got to give these titles. You're a man of many titles. And the chairman.
Well, almost like that guy you got coming on at 9 o'clock. Just call me His Royal Highness. That's all.
Yeah, His Royal Highness, King Turkey Faisal is coming up. But Curtis, also the founder and chairman. How do I say this word?
Emeritus.
Emeritus.
I don't know what it means, but it sounds good.
It sounds really good. It's even has that Latin thing going. Chairman Emeritus of the American Jobs Alliance. Thank you, Curtis. I'm out of time. Thank you.
John.
More information, go to AmericanJobsAlliance.com, a founding sponsor of the John Fredericks Radio Network. And we look forward to Curtis's new commercial for me, Swamp Watcher.